Hello and welcome to Monkey's Paper Palooza Craft Corner. Today I'm going to revisit Turnabout stamps, and for this video we are going to be using the Conquer the Ninth Butterfly Love Turnabout stamp and die set. And it's a beautiful new set that came out in their new release, and it has this beautiful butterfly turnabout with little add-on pieces to pop to it. Plus you get this fun die that actually goes with the large butterfly. And I'm going to show you how to do the turnabout on your 3 most popular platforms, and that way you can see which way you like to do it, or if you have one, which one you're going to use for this. So now Conquer the Ninth has been really awesome. They've made a new little acetate jig that you can use inside, which does help a lot with placement, because before you had to make your own jig for your Tim Holtz and your Misti / Stamp Perfect. I love the Tim Holtz, but I feel it works better for rubber stamps. Though if you put a mat underneath, I do feel like these work a little bit better in that. So if you have a Tim Holtz and you're finding the same issue, that these stamps are just not stamping very well, just add a little piece of foam underneath. And I usually just steal the one I have from my Stamp Perfect. Now on the back of here you see these wonderful layouts. You can see what you get when you stamp 1 time, stamp 2 times. I mean, you can even color in that butterfly on top and keep the fun colors underneath. If you do 3 times, it's a little less cluttered, but a little bit more fun. So nice little clusters on the bottom, and this is the full effect with 4 times. It is so much fun for a background piece. So we're going to start by putting our foam piece in our Tim Holtz stamping platform. And let me get ourselves adjusted here. I'm going to pull off our thing. It makes it a little easier when we're aligning everything. Now on top of here it says this way up, and you make sure you can read it, because if you do it the other way it will be reversed, though it probably still would work either way. And then you're going to put your magnets down. You're going to lay your stamp on there like so, matching up the image on the jig. And this is why I love the jig. It makes it so much more easier for placement. And you don't have to draw on your stamp anymore, which before you had to put lines on your stamp, and it was just more work. So they definitely made this process a lot easier now. Kind of more foolproof and a little less confusing. So I cut my papers into 6x6. They do recommend 6x6 squares. You can trim them down to whatever size you need after, but it does make it a lot easier to stamp it on. So I'm going to line this up in my corners as well as I can. And I found that the magnets fit on those 3 corners really well. And now I'm going to put my platforms thing backwards so that I can show you what I'm doing. I'm going to add some London Fog Memento ink onto that. Push that down. Nice impression. And there's some parts that I do feel don't hit right, even with the foam. It's one thing I really have noticed about the Tim Holtz platform. I love it for my mixed media and stamping with rubber stamps, but sometimes the clear stamps just don't work as well. And even with the foam, I sometimes miss images more than I do with my Stamp Perfect and my We Are Memory Keepers. So it's not always my go-to one for these clear photopolymer stamps, but it does work. It just takes a little bit more work. All right, so then we're going in our next color, which I believe is Bahama Blue. And the whole key with these turnabouts is you're going to turn your paper, especially with this platform and the Misti or Stamp Perfect. You're going to have to turn your paper to get that turnabout. Come in, and this is the Danube Blue. a little bit more here. Like I say, every once in a while, I feel like something misses the hinge. And I don't know if it's just the pressure. Since this is a big surface too, sometimes it's harder to get in a more even press. And the last one, I believe, is the Paris Dusk. And we're just going to push that down, try to get an even stamp. And once again, you see I've missed that middle butterfly is not hitting. I do find sometimes, like I said, I love the Tim Holtz for my rubber stamps, but sometimes these photopolymer are not the best thing for his platform. And there we go. Isn't that pretty? I mean, I love this. Though I do feel like sometimes we've missed some spots, but that's okay. It's kind of a very artsy thing. Now you can also do a layer of this in embossing powder too. Sadly, I could not do that for you guys, only because my heat tool has died and I'm in the process of getting a new one. All right, so now I'm going to show you this. Now, I did notice if you have the standard side Misti or the Stamp Perfect, I feel that the stamp does not fit completely in it. It does hang over a little by the hinge. It's still stampable, but if you had the bigger Misti, it would probably work good. Now, it's definitely not going to work in the mini Misti, so I wouldn't even try it because the image is going to be way too big because it needs a 6x6 surface. So I'm going to get some pinky tones. We're going to do this a little different colors only because we want to show the different panels and which one was which. So here we go. We're going to go in with a rosebud. And I'm just going to smooth it out in there. I like to massage it into it. I find with this one, you don't need to compress it like you do with the Tim Holtz. You can just massage it in and press in areas that you feel like you need a little bit more. Now, just like the Tim Holtz, you're going to have to turn your paper. This one is not going to be a issue where you're going to have to turn. In the last one, you're going to turn the plate versus the image. This one, you're going to be turning your paper. So it's a lot of moving your paper around, realigning. But it does give you a beautiful result. So it is definitely worth it. And really think about it. If you get a good clear stamp the first time, you're only stamping it like 4 times. So it's not a big deal. And that one was the Lilac Posies. Now I'm going to get I think it's something like that. Perfect Plum. That in there. Isn't that pretty? I'm loving the colors. And this one actually did good the first time. And the next one is Grape Jelly. And this one's going to really pop. Because it's a very dark purple, which is nice. And we're just going to press it down, make sure we get a good impression. And I think that came up pretty good the first time. So there is that one. It was easier to place, I think, and do with a Misti or Stamp Perfect than it was the Tim Holtz, only because you don't have to press as hard. You didn't miss as many spots. It's a better stamp for that platform. I mean, not that you can't use it with the Tim Holtz. You definitely can. It just takes a little bit more work. This is the We Are Memory Precision Press Advanced. It is a little different. So you're going to find the center point on your platform. And mine, of course, is going to be at 3 and 3. And I just flipped it the wrong way. So let me show you. That's why you make sure you can read that this is up, because you will put it on the wrong way. And this, with the 6x6 paper, you will actually be going right across, right up to the pegs. It'll fit perfect. This, of course, the acetate will go at the center point. So make that as centered as you can. And just match that up. And I think that's why they marked the center point, because they are realizing now that with this new We Are Memories Keeper, a lot of people are loving it for their turnabout stamps, and they're showing the center point for that point. Now, unlike the Tim Holtz and your Misti and the Stamp Perfect, you are not going to be turning the paper. You are going to be turning the plate. That is the only thing different between this. And for some, that is easier than moving their paper around. And others, they don't mind moving the paper around. It's fine. I mean, whatever platform you have, you can indeed do these. It's just a little different process. That's all. So I'm going to push that down. I like to push on all my corners. And I often find that usually one coat is fine. And I believe that was the dandelion. And this one is going to be the Tangelo. Now, you're not going to move your paper. Now, I find I have to move my magnet up to the big butterfly in the corner and just move my magnets around as I go. And then you can do your impression. We're going to come in with the rosebud once again. And a quick tip is, if you're doing these, if you go lightest to darkest, you won't have to clean your stamp as much, because you will not contaminate the darker color with the lighter color. Now this one did not get a good impression, so we're going to go right back through here again and do another imprint. Now we're going to do grape jelly. A nice thing about these turnabouts too is that even if your paper does slip, let's just say when you're doing the next layer, it doesn't matter. It kind of blends together no matter what. Some of them are a little bit more trickier, but this one is a very nice design because you don't really have to be too picky. But look at that. Isn't that pretty? Fun little panel. I mean, it's a little bit easier than the Misti, but not much. But it definitely is a lot easier than the Tim Holtz. Only because I felt like the Tim Holtz, I had to do more imprints to get a cleaner imprint than I did with the other two. So next we're going to go to this big butterfly and the little butterflies, as well as the sentiments when we make the cards. So I'm bringing out my We Are Memory Keepers press again, and I'm just going to big butterfly hat. And this is a fun layering stamp too. Though I am going to say when you're cutting, it's going to be a little trickier, because I almost think, and I didn't realize this until after I made my cards, that honestly cutting out the butterfly after you've put the wings and then putting your little butterfly center on after, because it was hard, how can I say, hard to align the little butterfly in the cutout, only because his antennas don't line up right no matter how you place them. So you'll see that when I make the cards and I cut them out, I had to go back over and color in his antennas because it didn't cut right. And it's hard with the antennas lining it up. So just a hint. So I'm going to try doing it a little different. This time I'm going to do kind of a rainbow color effect, kind of ombre. So I went in with my yellow, and then I'm going to go in with my pink. And then I'm going to do a little bit of purple in the center, and then I'm going to go back and do a little bit more pink. I think just to cover in this butterfly. And he kind of makes a fun little rainbow ombre effect. Isn't that pretty? A little bit of cocoa brown for the body. And I also did one in blue with the cocoa brown. So here's my 3 butterflies. All have a fun, different effect. Now we have this cute little butterfly, and he is absolutely adorable. You can stamp him by himself, which I'm going to do now, and just to add for a little extras. And there is a die that you can cut him out. And what's nice is it cuts really, really clean around there. So you don't have to worry about the white being around this tiny butterfly. It is actually super close. So if you slip a little bit, you might get a little bit of the white. But other than that, it's a very tight cut, which is very rare for die cuts. Usually you'll get the white border. This one you really don't. So I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to put the words on top of these butterflies and kind of give like a ghost image. And so I did a twofer there. I grabbed that stamp where I wanted it as I was stamping my other butterfly. Isn't that fun? Now when I go back around, I know for sure I took it off. Why did I do that? Should have left it on. I think it's because it was taking off the butterfly and I just took off both. The words over it, and when I cut it, you're not going to see all the other words. Or you can do this for a sentiment. You know, put the butterfly behind it and then put the sentiment in black on top of it. It'd be really, really classy and pretty too. So great way to make multi-uses of your kit. All right, so I've cut all my stuff out and I've done everything. Now for my first card, I took the cardstock card form and I added a little cutout on the bottom with a little dash of ribbon and some polka dot vellum as a little sash. Now I'm going to 3D mount my it was a pink butterfly, and I had to color in the antennas and the bottom, like I said, because it just doesn't die cut right. I think if you were doing a layering, I would do a solid color butterfly body because you do get the butterfly body die cut too, and just leave the wings. You could do it that way also and get a better effect. Color him in a little bit, but not a biggie. You can color him in with a marker if you have a marker, or I'll show you in a little bit in the next card how to do it with your ink pad. So I'm going to put a little dot of Zig two-way glue in the center of this butterfly, and I'm going to add some Aurora Borealis 4mm rhinestone, or a rhinestone in the center. That way we have this really fun little bling in the middle. And then I'm going to take my We Are Memory Keepers out again, and I'm going to align it onto my platform. I keep on always telling you guys, that's one thing I really love about this platform is after I'm done placing all my stuff, I can actually put the sentiment on there without worrying about my 3D mounting being in the way. I mean, you can do that usually with a flat card in the Misti or with a Tim Holtz, but sometimes the hinge gets in the way. But with this, I can have 3D mounting, I can have rhinestones and still line up my words. And even have a totally assembled card and add a sentiment to it after the fact. Like sometimes I make note cards and I think, oh, I want to really put a sentiment in there. And I can do it with this. It gives you a little less pre-planning and more spontaneity, which is kind of cool because then sometimes you don't line it up right. You can just fix it correctly. Make sure the sentiment fits in perfectly where you want to put it. It's really nice. There is this card. Isn't that adorable? All right, so for the second card we're going to make with our backgrounds and our stuff, I'm going to take some blue ribbon from my ribbon rolls here. In these videos, I need to take a walkthrough of my new office in my studio. That way you see where I have all my stuff that I pull from when I make these videos. It's kind of fun. I did a lot of shopping with IKEA and it really makes a fun work surface. So for this one, I'm going to put the sash of this Offray ribbon almost to the top, and I'm going to 3D mount. And like I said, I'm going to color in his antennas, and you can just take your little edge of your ink pad, just color them in if you need to, or if you have a matching marker, just color them in. And he doesn't look so odd. I think I would do the stamps if I was doing it together on a panel that were going to stay together and not cut out. If you're going to die cut, I would either do them separate and glue them together, or stamp the body on after you die cut the wings. Either way. Only because I found it just does not cut well together if you do it that way. So I put my vellum on with some adhesive on the butterfly, and now underneath the vellum, I am putting my 3D mount. This is a great way to hide your adhesive underneath your vellum, because if I would have put that on the opposite way, I would have had very little ways to adhere it. So I really like that thing. Plus it makes the vellum start kind of float, which is kind of a nice effect. Then I have some beautiful iridescent little almost blue and sea green sequins that I got in a kit. And I'm going to put those on there just to give it a little bit of sparkle. But first, I'm going to have to put a sentiment on this. So let me get those out of my way, and then we'll figure out placement once we get the sentiment on. And like I said, once again, the great thing is now that I get everything placed, I can figure out where exactly I want to put my sentiment. I don't have to think about it ahead of time and then take off all the pieces and reapply it. It does save me some steps. I do have to say that's one thing I love about it. And I find if I don't put my piece exactly against the pegs, it doesn't slide as much. So that's another tint too. Some people are saying their image is blurred because it's slid. I don't put mine up against the peg. Very rarely do I. And I find that sometimes it slips away from the pegs a little bit. So I kind of put mine more towards the grid versus the pegs. And it seems to work a lot better when it's not sliding as much. There is our little sequins on there. Isn't that pretty? Now, I'm going to now open it up and now put my inside sentiment. And like I said, less planning ahead, more just going with the moment. Because I'm sorry, sometimes when you're crafting, you forget things, you get a little out of sort, you get excited and you start doing things out of order. And it sometimes happens, or you forget the sentiment and you're like, oh, now I gotta go inside and try to do it. I love this platform. It really has taken away the planning and made it more spontaneous and more artistic. And there you go, beautiful little blue butterfly card. And now for this one, I've got those cute little word butterflies. And as you see, like I said, that die cuts them really close. So it's very clean cut. So now I'm going to take some pink of that Offray ribbon. And like I said, I have every color known to man in this ribbon because I love it so much. It doesn't show bubbles and it doesn't show imperfections as well. And I love it for that. It's just this nice little mesh cotton twill and it just sits perfectly. It doesn't show bubbles. It doesn't show glue underneath it. It's just nice. I'm going to adhere this panel to a white cardstock card form. And then I'm going to do the same thing I did with the other piece. I'm going to adhere my butterfly. And this butterfly is from a piece that I did just using a single color with the go around. And I did it on a tan cardstock. And I cut it out of the panel with the die. And you'll see what I'm going to use the opposite part for in the next part. And it gives a nice shadowy effect of the butterflies on the butterfly. Now I think I'm going to put this a little off-center because I was going to do it centered, but I think I like it off-centered more. And now I'm going to glue my little butterflies on there with my 2-way glue. And just randomly put them on top of the big butterfly. And I thought it was really cool with the different textures with the butterflies with the words on it and different colors. And then the imprint of the shadow effect on the big butterfly that matches the background. It's really fun textures to it. Really seeing it in person gives you so much more effect. And now I'm coming in with some more of those little Aurora Borealis rhinestones and adding them to there just to give it some bling. Now, once again, I'm going to add my sentiment after I get everything lined up. A lot of people say, well, you can do this with the Misti. You can. It does work better if you have a flatter card versus having anything with 3D mounting. I just think the 3D mounting and the hinge sometimes just don't work well together sometimes. And especially when you're trying to put a sentiment inside, it sometimes buckles. And I'm just adding the loved in grape jelly on the front. And then when I go inside, I think also it helps is the open corners on the back side because you only have those pegs on 2 sides. So the other 2 sides are entirely empty, which does make it easier for doing these kind of effects because your paper can go out versus the enclosure of the Misti. I haven't really tried it much with the Tim Holtz, if that would work any different. Now here is the opposite. Like I said, I cut out that butterfly. Now this is the panel we're going to use on top of this one. And for this one, I'm going to make a shaker card. And I'm going to do the shaker card a little different than a traditional one because I'm going to enclose my pieces within the acetate. Only because I wanted to be able to line up on top of the butterfly with the sequins. And I didn't want them falling out as I did so. So I'm going to make a little box around my butterfly. And we're going to cut this in half. It makes a cool little shaker effect over this because it is very hard to align an image underneath a shaker when you have it already on the paper. Sometimes when you just have a background piece, it's not as bad. You can just putting any basic color under back of it. It's not a big deal. But for this, since I want to align the butterfly perfectly in the window, it's easier to make its own little enclosed shaker area. Add some more of this to it. Take off my strips here. That off there. Okay. So now we got the strips. I got these beautiful little white iridescent sequins, and they're just beautiful. They're just teeny tiny little sequins, and they're perfect for this shaker. Now I'm going to put my acetate down, and it makes a cute little window. And it keeps all the little sequins in when I'm going to go in a minute and flip this right on top of the butterfly. So if you do have an image behind and you're trying to figure out how do I line this up, this is the way. Because any other way you're going to have a mess. And now I can align my butterfly and adhere it down. And I always add excess to my shaker cards on the back panel. And there's a reason why. And the reason why is you can always cut down, but you can never cut up. So when you're placing things, give yourself that leeway, that space to do it. Because you can cut down the back after you're done and get a beautiful clean cut. No one's going to see your cut in the back versus if you misalign it wrong, and it makes more work for yourself. So don't do that. And just make it easy for yourself. Leave excess, cut it off. All right, so now I got some beautiful purple Offray ribbon we're going to put right on the cross of this just to tie it in. Isn't that pretty? Oh my, I love this card. And this is one that has a special purpose too. I have a friend of mine who is leaving for college, and I am going to make her this beautiful little going away butterfly card because I think she is going to love it. So we're going to do this in grape jelly. The sentiment, change is good, because college is a change, especially when you're moving away from home. So we're going to adhere this panel now to our craft cardstock card form. And I'm going to put spread your wings inside it. I'm going to do that in the same grape jelly. So now we're ready for adhering this panel. And like you see, sometimes when you cut it like that free form in the back, it does get messy looking, but no one's going to see it. This is your back panel. Your front panel is all they're going to see. And as long as that's beautiful and clean, the rest doesn't matter. I'm going to trim these edges a little bit. I noticed there was a little pull on it. There we go. And there's that card. Isn't that pretty? Now that by itself is gorgeous, but we're going to add some more bling. So I'm going to take some of my matte lilac 5mm sequins and then add some of those iridescent ones with it, just to tie in the purples and the iridescence. I like the almost watermark effect of this background on this panel. You could do it with Versamark too. I decided I had the lighter color that was just the same color but just a tad darker, and it worked out perfect. So you could do it either way, with just a darker tone to your paper or with the Versamark. Isn't that pretty? I think that's just a gorgeous little shaker. So turnabouts can be a fun way to make beautiful cards. And Concords and Ninths turnabout stamps don't leave anything to be unexpected. It just, everything works together beautifully. If you like this video, please check out the last video we uploaded, as well as one specially curated just for you. And like always, we welcome you to like, subscribe, and ring for notifications, as well as check out our Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, and our website for more details.